I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, especially not by my wife, Julia. We've been together for almost 10 years, married for 6, and I thought I knew her inside and out. She's always been a bit of a bitch, honestly, sharp-tongued, quick to lie, and always had a way of making herself seem like the victim. But I loved her, or at least I thought I did. We had a decent life, a nice home, steady jobs, and a dog that I swear was more loyal than she was sometimes. The trouble started about 3 months ago, right after her birthday. She came home from work more irritable than usual, snapping at me over stupid stuff, avoiding intimacy, giving me those short, dismissive answers when I tried to talk. I figured she was just stressed at her job, which she always said was a nightmare. But then I noticed she was hiding her phone more often, locking it when she went to the bathroom, and when she thought I wasn't looking, she'd be quick to delete messages. Nothing explicit, but enough that I felt like she was hiding something. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept an eye on her. She's always been a bit of a liar, so I figured the best way to catch her would be to see if she slipped up. But I wasn't prepared for what I found next. One night I was sitting on the couch, exhausted after a long day, and I noticed her phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. I normally wouldn't care, but this time she was out of the room for a minute and I saw the notification. Something about "can't wait to see you tonight. Love you." It was from a number I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. I picked up her phone when she wasn't looking, just to peek. The messages weren't long, but they were enough to make my blood run cold. She'd been talking to someone, and from what I could see, it was more than just friendly banter. The guy, whose name I later found out was Jake, worked on the asteroid mining crew that she'd been assigned to during a 6-month mission. Yeah, we're talking about space. Earth's communication blackout mode, and she's out there screwing around with some astronaut. I mean, I shouldn't have been surprised she'd cheat. She's always been a bitch, quick with the insults, provocative and totally self-centered. But I never thought she'd cheat with a space guy. That's next-level betrayal. The thing is, I started thinking back on all the little signs. The late nights when she'd say she was working late, the sudden trips out of town, her being strangely distant and dismissive when I brought up our sex life. And then there was the way she'd avoid my eyes when I asked her about her phone. It all clicked. I felt stupid, humiliated, furious. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I just sat there holding her phone, staring at the messages, trying to process how she could do this to me, her husband, the guy she's supposed to love and trust. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to think, figure out what to do, how to handle this bombshell. But in my head, I already knew. Julia was a bitch, always had been, and she'd been cheating on me with some space captain because she's incapable of being faithful, or maybe she just doesn't care. Either way, I knew my world was about to change forever. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around the messages, the lies, the betrayal. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see that she was already checked out of our marriage long before I caught her. It's like I was blind, or maybe just too stupid to realize she'd been slipping away from me for months. She always had a way of twisting the truth, lying her ass off with that bitchy smirk on her face, making me doubt myself instead of her. The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit on this. I needed answers. I woke up before dawn, made coffee, and waited for her to get up. When she finally appeared, all bright and bitchy, I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "We need to talk." Her face immediately changed. That smirk faded, replaced by that "I'm better than everyone" attitude she's perfected over the years. She looked at me as if I was bothering her, like I was intruding on her precious time, and said, "What's up? Can it wait?" I wasn't in the mood for her usual manipulations. I pulled out her phone and laid it on the table. "Who the hell is Jake?" I demanded, my voice steady but icy. Her eyes widened for a split second, and then she rolled her eyes. "Jake? Who the hell cares about Jake? You're reading too much into it," she said, trying to brush it off like it was nothing. But I wasn't stupid. I'd seen enough. The way her fingers trembled just slightly, the way she avoided my gaze, it all told me she knew she'd been caught. She tried to gaslight me, of course. Started throwing out a bunch of bullshit, how I was paranoid, how I was crazy to think she'd cheat on me. "You're overreacting," she said. "It's just space coffee chat, that's all. You're so insecure, always suspecting me of cheating." That word cheating, it hit me like a punch in the gut, because I knew better than to believe her lies now. She's always been a manipulator, a liar, and a bitch, and now she was telling me it was all in my head. I could see the anger and contempt in her eyes, how she dismissed my feelings like they meant nothing. I told her flat out, "I saw the messages, Julia. You're cheating on me with Jake during the space mission, while I was here thinking you were working late. You're fucking around with some space crew member and I want to know why. Why the hell would you do this?" Her face twisted into something ugly, like she was annoyed that I was even asking. She crossed her arms and scoffed, "Oh, please. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I was just talking to him about work. Nothing more. You're so insecure, it's pathetic." That's when I felt my stomach turn cold. The way she lied so effortlessly, like she was convinced she could get away with it. She's always been like that, blaming me, making me doubt myself, turning everything around. But I wasn't falling for it this time. I told her, "I don't care what you say. I saw the messages and I know what's really going on. I want you to pack your bags and get out. I can't trust you anymore, Julia, not after this." Her eyes flashed with that bitchy defiance she's known for. "You're overreacting. This is just a stupid misunderstanding. You're blowing everything out of proportion because you're insecure and jealous." She always had a way of turning things around, making herself the victim. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I kept my voice steady. "No more lies, Julia. I'm done. If you want to be with Jake, if you want to cheat and lie, you can do it on your own. I don't want to be married to someone who doesn't respect me or our vows." That's when she finally lost her cool. She started yelling, calling me an insecure idiot, saying I was paranoid, that I was the one who had trust issues. Her voice was high-pitched, full of venom, and I could see the contempt in her eyes. Honestly, I'd never felt so betrayed, so disgusted. This wasn't just some fling. This was her throwing away everything we had, using the space mission as some excuse to go screw some guy. I realized I was done trying to fix this. I had to plan my next move carefully, because this was just the beginning of something much darker. After she stormed out of the room, I sat there with her phone in my hand, feeling a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and a kind of numb disbelief. I didn't even bother to hide how furious I was. I knew I had to do something, but I also knew I couldn't just fly off the handle. Julia was good at pushing buttons, twisting everything she could, and I wasn't about to let her make me look crazy or like I was overreacting. But I also knew this wasn't just some petty argument. I was staring straight at a betrayal of everything I thought we had. I spent the next few hours gathering my thoughts. I started digging into her messages more thoroughly, searching for anything I might have missed. Sure enough, there was more than just the quick affirmations and flirty comments. There were explicit exchanges, plans to meet after the space mission, even talk about how she was tired of me and how Jake made her feel alive again. That was the moment I realized this was more than just an affair. This was a full-blown betrayal that cut deep. She wasn't just cheating. She was actively planning her escape, using some space crew member as her ticket out of our life together. I knew I had to act fast. If she was that reckless, I was going to give her the satisfaction of catching her completely off guard. I decided I'd set a trap, something to make her realize I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I needed her to see she wasn't going to get away with this without consequences. I started making plans in my head, how to confront her again, how to get more evidence, and how to make sure she understood she'd crossed a line from which there was no return. But I also felt a strange surge of emotion, something like a mixture of heartbreak, betrayal, and an intense need for revenge. I wasn't just going to dump her or kick her out. I wanted to make her pay for what she did. I wanted her to realize that her lies and her cheating had consequences. That night, I stayed awake, going over every detail, every word she'd said, every lie I'd caught her in. Part of me still hoped she'd come clean, admit she'd fucked up and try to fix it. But deep down, I knew Julia was a bitch who'd never admit she was wrong unless it suited her. I made a decision that I wouldn't just confront her again and beg for answers. No, I needed to turn the tables. I started planning how to expose her cheating to everyone she cared about, how to make her feel the shame she deserved. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She wanted to lie and manipulate her way out of this. Fine. I'd fight back in a way she'd never see coming. I'd make her regret the day she ever decided to cheat on me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I'd been a fool to believe she loved me, that she ever cared about our marriage. Julia was just a bitch who liked to control, lie, and screw her way through life, space crew or not. I was sick of feeling like a second choice, like I was just some guy who stuck around because I was too comfortable, too afraid to face the truth. But now I was done. She pushed me too far, and I was ready to tear her down piece by piece to make her pay for what she'd done. And I knew deep down that I'd do whatever it took to make her realize I wasn't someone to mess with. I better get ready, because I was about to turn her entire world upside down. The next day, I woke up with a clear plan in mind. I realized that if I was going to do this, I had to be smart, precise, and ruthless. Julia was a bitch, yes, but she was also manipulative and sneaky. I couldn't let her see what I was planning, or she'd just cover her tracks. I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could find, screenshots of her messages, times she'd been sneaking around, anything that could prove she'd been lying. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I'd fight back and make her regret ever crossing me. I started by going through her phone more carefully, taking screenshots of every incriminating message. I knew she'd be cagey if she thought I was onto her, so I had to do it in a way that wouldn't tip her off. I also kept an eye on her schedule, watching for any signs of her sneaking off or making secret calls. I wasn't about to let her slip away without a fight. I also called a private investigator I knew from a friend, someone discreet who could help me dig up her recent activities if needed. I didn't want her to think I was just some naive husband. I wanted to get all the facts, every piece of her treachery. While I was doing that, Julia was still acting like everything was normal. Bitchy, dismissive, throwing her usual insults when I tried to talk to her. She kept lying, telling me she was working late, going out with friends, or busy with her important projects. It was obvious she was trying to cover her tracks, but I'd seen enough to know she was lying. Her attitude was a mask for her guilt, and I could see that now. She was trying to act like she was the victim, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time I needed to do it with proof. I planned to catch her in a lie, to expose her in front of everyone if I had to. I wanted her to understand that I was not going to be played for a fool anymore. The betrayal cut so deep that anger was starting to turn into cold, calculated resolve. I knew Julia's game. She'd try to spin her lies and manipulate her way out of this, but I was ready. This time, I'd be the one in control. In the late afternoon, I set the trap. I told her I needed to talk, wanted to discuss our marriage, and asked her to meet me in the living room. She rolled her bitchy eyes and said she'd be there when she was done with her important call. I waited until she was on the phone and then pulled out my phone, ready to catch her in the act. I pretended I wasn't listening, but I pressed record just in case she slipped up. I knew she'd be cocky, think she had control of the situation, but I wanted to see how far she'd go. When she finally came into the room, I looked her straight in the eyes. "Julia," I said, "I know about Jake. I know about everything. I've got the proof, and I'm not playing games anymore." Her face instantly froze, the bitchy smirk replaced by a flicker of panic. She tried to deny it, of course, but I just held up the screenshots I'd taken. "Don't lie to me," I said coldly. "I've got everything right here. You've been screwing around while I was worried sick about you. How long has this been going on? Since the space mission?" She looked at me, then at my phone, and her eyes darted around like a cornered animal. She tried those usual bullshit excuses. "It's just sex. It doesn't mean anything. I was lonely, but I wasn't buying it." I told her she had two choices: own up, accept what she did, and tell me the truth, or I'd expose everything to everyone we knew. Because I'd already started calling people we know, giving them a heads up that their perfect wife was a lying, cheating bitch. That shut her up for a second. She was furious, angry, and spiteful, but she knew she'd been caught. She finally burst out with a string of lies, trying to turn it around and make me the bad guy. "You don't understand," she snapped. "Jake's just a friend. You're crazy, jealous, possessive. It's none of your business what I do at work. That's..." When I snapped, I told her I was done with her bullshit, that I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I told her she was a bitch who thought she could cheat and lie her way out of everything, but not anymore. I was done being the fool she had taken for granted. Her face twisted in anger, but she knew I meant business. I told her she could pack her bags and leave, or she could stay and face the consequences. But I was done pretending everything was okay. This is when I knew that our marriage was over, at least in its current form. The trust was shattered, and I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I'd make sure everyone knew what she was capable of, what kind of person she really was, so she'd learn her lesson. And honestly, I felt a strange sense of relief. One chapter of my life was closing, and I was finally ready to face whatever came next. After that confrontation, everything changed. Julia was furious, screaming and trying to spin her usual lies, saying I was crazy, that I was just jealous, that she never really loved Jake. But I wasn't listening anymore. Her words just bounced off my hardened resolve. I'd already made up my mind. She was done, and I was done with the fake, pretend marriage we'd been nose-diving into for months. I told her she could leave that night, and she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, her high heels clicking on the hardwood as she went. I spent the next few days in a mix of shock and clarity. The initial rage and heartbreak started to give way to cold calculation. I wanted her to know she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I'd already started leaking the truth to friends and colleagues, people we both knew, the ones who thought we were the perfect couple. I told them everything, that Julia had been cheating, lying, and using space as her escape route. Word spread fast. I wanted her to realize she wasn't just hurting me, she was destroying her reputation. And then I started planning my revenge. Not in some petty way, more like a calculated, psychological one. I knew Julia's ego was her weakness. She loved being the center of attention, the queen bee, the one who could manipulate everything. I decided I'd make her feel exactly how I felt, betrayed, humiliated, and powerless. I wanted her to see that her actions had consequences, and I'd be the one to deliver them. I hired a private investigator, as I'd planned, to dig up more details. Turns out, Julia had been traveling to meet Jake on the sly. She'd booked flights, stayed in hotels, and even had a whole secret stash of messages that she'd hidden from me. It was all so much worse than I thought. She wasn't just cheating. She'd been planning to leave me, using her space mission as an excuse to disappear with him. That realization hit me harder than anything else. She'd been actively planning her escape, and I'd been blind to it for months. The most satisfying part was when I finally got enough proof to confront her again, this time with everything laid out. I called her, told her I knew about her trips, her lies, her plans to run away with Jake. I told her I'd be exposing her to everyone, her friends, her family, her coworkers, if she didn't come clean and accept what she'd done. That was when she finally broke. She tried to deny everything, but I had the evidence. I played her recordings, the flight receipts, the messages. Watching her squirm was almost too good to be true. In the end, she admitted it all, crying and bitching that I was ruining her life, that I was insecure, that she deserved to be happy. But I wasn't listening anymore. I realized I'd wasted enough time on someone so selfish. I told her to get out, that I wanted her gone for good. I wasn't about to give her another chance to lie her way out of this. The pain was immense, but I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control of my life again after being a passive victim for so long. Now I'm living with the aftermath. It's quiet here, too quiet sometimes. The house feels emptier, and I miss the person I thought she was. But I also know that I'm better off without her lies, her bitchy attitude, and her constant manipulations. I learned that trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. The hardest part is knowing I was naive enough to believe in her, to think she truly cared. But I'm not letting myself fall into that trap again. I'm rebuilding slowly and trying to move forward. If I could give anyone advice, it's this: trust your instincts. If something doesn't feel right, investigate it. Don't ignore the signs, because one day you might find out that the person you trusted most was just pretending. And when that day comes, don't hesitate, take action. Because once betrayal turns real, the only way to heal is by facing it head on. Now, I spend a lot of time reflecting on what's happened. The house still feels too quiet, like it's missing a part of me. Sometimes I wonder how I missed it all for so long, how someone I loved and trusted could turn out to be so selfish and manipulative. But I also realize that I can't change the past. I can only control what comes next. It's taken me a while to accept that I deserve better, that I shouldn't have tolerated her bitchy attitude, her lies, her constant manipulation. The thing I've learned most through all this mess is that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches you who you really are, what you're willing to accept and what you're not. I used to think I was weak for letting her get away with so much, but now I see that I was just blinded by love. That love was a lie, and her betrayal was the truth I needed to finally see. Moving forward, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life piece by piece without her. It's not easy, and I still have moments where I feel angry or sad, but I know I'm better off without the constant drama she brought into my world. I've cut off all contact with her, and I don't plan on ever letting her back in. She's proven she's incapable of real loyalty, and I refuse to be her punching bag or her backup plan. Instead, I'm focusing on myself, my work, my hobbies, my peace of mind. I want to heal, learn to trust again, but this time more carefully. I've realized that not everyone is worth your trust, and that some people will betray you for their own selfish reasons, no matter how much you love them. If I could leave one piece of advice for anyone reading this, it's this: pay attention to the signs. Don't dismiss your gut feelings because you're scared or in love. If your partner is lying, hiding their phone, acting distant, or just not acting like themselves, don't ignore it. Because the truth will come out eventually, and when it does, you want to be the one in control, not the one caught off guard, not the one feeling blindsided by betrayal. Protect yourself, trust cautiously, and never settle for less than you deserve. This experience has been brutal, no doubt about it, but it's also been a wake-up call. I know now that I'm capable of walking away from someone who doesn't respect me, someone who uses me, and that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. No more being the fool. No more pretending everything is okay when it's not. I've learned to stand up for myself, to cut out what's toxic, and to value my own happiness above all else. Julia's gone, and honestly, I don't miss her. I've got a new perspective on what true trust and respect mean. I'm not perfect, and it'll take time to fully heal, but I'm finally free. Free from her lies, her manipulations, her constant bitchiness. And that's enough for me to move on, stronger and wiser than I was before.